Along cold, shifting coastlines where land loosens its grip and the sea presses endlessly inward, a smooth grey shape breaks the surface, breathes once, and disappears again without a ripple. This is the harbour seal, an animal perfectly adapted to the boundary between worlds. It belongs neither fully to land nor entirely to ocean, but to the restless space in between. Its life unfolds where tides rise and fall, where silence alternates with surf, and where survival depends on reading two environments at once. The evolutionary story of the harbour seal begins not in water, but on land. Millions of years ago, its ancestors were terrestrial carnivorous mammals, moving on four limbs, breathing air, hunting on solid ground. As marine ecosystems expanded and opportunities emerged offshore, some lineages began to follow food into the water. What followed was not a sudden transformation, but a gradual surrender to the sea. Limbs flattened into flippers, bodies elongated and streamlined, fur thickened, fat accumulated, and senses rewired themselves for a world of pressure, cold, and motion. Harbour seals represent one of the most refined outcomes of this transition. Their bodies are dense, compact, and efficient, built to conserve heat and minimize drag. A thick layer of blubber insulates against frigid water, storing energy and buffering internal temperature from external extremes. Above it, a short, sleek coat reduces resistance, allowing smooth movement through water without turbulence. Nothing about the harbour seal is ornamental. Every curve exists for a reason. Movement in water is effortless and controlled. Unlike sea lions, which rely heavily on their front flippers, harbour seals generate propulsion primarily from powerful rear flippers and undulating body motion. This design favors sustained swimming over bursts of speed, endurance over spectacle. Underwater, the harbour seal becomes something else entirely, silent, precise, and fluid. On land, however, it appears almost awkward, dragging its body forward with limited mobility. This contrast is not a weakness. It is specialization made visible. The head of the harbour seal reveals its sensory priorities. Large, dark eyes dominate the face, adapted to low-light underwater conditions. Vision here is not sharp in the human sense, but sensitive to movement and contrast. More important still are the whiskers, long and stiff vibrissae that function as sophisticated detection instruments. These whiskers can sense minute changes in water flow, allowing the seal to track the wake left behind by swimming fish long after they have passed. In darkness or murky water, this ability becomes decisive. Hearing, too, bridges two worlds. Harbour seals detect sound both above and below water, adjusting pressure and orientation to interpret vibrations accurately. In the ocean, sound travels farther and faster than light. For a predator and a prey species alike, this sense becomes an early warning system, mapping the unseen. Behaviorally, the harbour seal is cautious and observant. It does not dominate its environment through aggression or size. Instead, it survives through awareness. When hauled out on rocks or beaches to rest, seals remain alert, heads raised, scanning constantly. At the first sign of disturbance, they slide back into the water with minimal effort. Retreat is immediate. Confrontation is unnecessary. Feeding defines much of the harbour seal's daily rhythm. Fish, squid, crustaceans, and occasionally seabirds form the bulk of its diet. Hunting is active, not ambush-based. The seal dives repeatedly, adjusting depth and duration with precision. Oxygen is conserved through slowed heart rate and restricted blood flow to non-essential organs. Each dive is calculated, each ascent timed. Socially, harbour seals are not deeply communal, but neither are they solitary. They gather in loose groups at haul-out sites, sharing space without complex hierarchies. There is little overt competition. Proximity provides safety in numbers, not social bonding. Communication occurs through posture, movement, and simple vocalizations, especially during breeding season, when underwater calls carry across wide distances. Reproduction is synchronized with environmental conditions. Pups are born on land or ice, depending on location, already capable of swimming within hours. Mothers nurse them with milk extraordinarily rich in fat, accelerating growth in a short window of vulnerability. There is no prolonged childhood. The sea waits, indifferent to weakness. Humans have shared coastlines with harbour seals for thousands of years, and the relationship has shifted repeatedly. Once hunted heavily for oil, fur, and meat, harbour seals declined drastically in many regions. In modern times, protection and conservation have allowed populations to recover, sometimes bringing them into conflict with fisheries. To humans, they appear abundant. To ecosystems, they represent balance restored. The harbour seal is not dramatic. It does not leap or roar. It does not command attention. And yet, it persists quietly, adapting to changing coastlines, warming waters, and human presence with measured resilience. It is a reminder that survival does not always require dominance or spectacle. Sometimes, it requires only awareness, patience, and the ability to belong to more than one world at once. As daylight shifts and tides redraw the coastline once more, the harbour seal adapts without ceremony. Its life is not structured around fixed territory or rigid schedules, but around opportunity. Food availability, water temperature, and human activity shape its movements day by day. Flexibility is not a behavior here, it is a requirement. In an environment where stability is an illusion, the harbor seal survives by never fully committing to one pattern for too long. Diving reveals the full extent of this adaptation. When submerged, the harbor seal enters a physiological state that borders on suspension. Heart rate slows dramatically. Blood flow is redirected away from peripheral tissues and concentrated toward the brain and heart. Muscles tolerate low oxygen levels without fatigue. Carbon dioxide accumulates without panic. These are not conscious choices. They're inherited mechanisms, refined through generations of individuals that failed to surface in time. Depth is relative. Most dives are shallow, dictated by prey rather than capacity. Yet when necessary, the harbor seal can descend far below the surface, entering colder, darker layers where pressure increases and sound dominates perception. Down here, the world narrows to vibration and motion. Fish scatter, squid flash briefly, then vanish. The seal adjusts, corrects, persists. Predation pressure shapes constant vigilance. Orcas, sharks, and large terrestrial predators near shore all pose threats. Against these, the harbor seal does not fight. It avoids. Early detection is survival. A subtle shift in water pressure, a distant sound pattern out of place, a shadow where none should be, these signals trigger immediate withdrawal. Speed is used not to chase, but to escape. On land, vulnerability increases. Haul-out sites are chosen carefully, isolated rocks, sandbars, ice flows where access is limited. Rest is essential, but it is never deep. Even while lying motionless, the harbor seal remains semi-alert, muscles ready, senses tuned. Sleep occurs in fragments. Total relaxation is a luxury rarely afforded. Seasonal change brings transformation. Molting replaces old fur with new, a process requiring time on land and increased blood flow to the skin. During this period, seals haul out more frequently, exposing themselves to risk in exchange for renewal. Breeding follows its own rhythm, driven by hormonal cycles and environmental cues rather than social bonds. Males compete indirectly, through presence and persistence rather than violence. Females choose timing, location, and distance. Human presence has become a permanent variable in the harbor seal's equation. Boats, noise, pollution, fishing gear, and warming waters reshape coastal ecosystems at accelerating rates. Some seals retreat, others adjust. Urban harbors, once hostile, become hunting grounds rich in fish drawn by artificial structures. Adaptation continues, but margins narrow. Yet despite these pressures, the harbor seal endures. Not as a symbol of wilderness untouched, but as evidence that life can persist alongside disruption, provided space and restraint remain. Its recovery in many regions stands as proof that protection works, that balance can be restored when exploitation recedes. As evening settles and the sea darkens, the harbor seal slips back into water that has carried its kind for millions of years. There is no awareness of history in its movement, no sense of legacy. And yet, in its breath, its dive, its return, lies continuity. A mammal that chose the sea and learned to belong to it without ever fully abandoning the land. In that tension between worlds, the harbor seal continues, not loudly, not boldly, but steadily. And sometimes, that is enough.